you're a test pilot in a brand new Boeing 707, a plane that's said to be the future of air travel. It's sleek, it's fast, and it's taking its final test flight before hitting the commercial market. But as the plane climbs to 12,000 feet, things go horribly wrong. 3 engines suddenly tear away from the wings, leaving only one struggling to hold a 140,000-pound plane aloft. You have minutes, if that, to decide. Can you keep this plane in the air long enough to reach safety? This is the real story of one of the most incredible feats of flying ever attempted. On a crisp morning on October 19, 1959, Boeing Field in Seattle buzzed with excitement. Boeing's newest plane, the 707, was set for its final customer acceptance, a chance for Braniff International Airways to see if Boeing's promises would live up to the hype. You could say this was a high-stakes airborne sales pitch. In the mid-20th century, airlines were racing to expand with jets that could safely, reliably, and efficiently carry passengers across vast distances, and Boeing wanted the 707 to be the answer. This plane promised to do what no other plane could at the time: carry over 180 passengers in pressurized, high-speed comfort for thousands of miles without refueling. If it lived up to its specs, Boeing would cement its place in history as a leader in commercial aviation. So, of course, the stakes were high. As the crew of 8 prepared for takeoff, all eyes were on the plane. Success on this flight would push the 707 closer to full commercial launch. If anything went wrong, well, Boeing's reputation and its future orders hung in the balance. At the controls of this flight were some of Boeing's finest. Seasoned test pilot Bill Wheatley, who had years of experience managing high-stress test flights. Sitting beside Wheatley was Bob Laird, another highly experienced pilot with an in-depth knowledge of the 707's intricate systems. Wheatley, in command, had flown countless planes through rigorous tests, but the 707 was a different challenge. Laird's role was to monitor the aircraft's performance and support Wheatley through any tricky maneuvers that might arise. Together, these 2 pilots were responsible for ensuring that this dream flight was executed flawlessly. Behind them was a team of 6 engineers, technicians, and Braniff representatives, all well-versed in the 707. Their job was to observe and record every aspect of the plane's performance, assessing its handling to reassure Braniff of its reliability. This hand-picked team represented Boeing's best talent. The takeoff went flawlessly. Wheatley smoothly guided the jet off the runway, its powerful engines propelling it skyward as Boeing Field disappeared below. Inside the cockpit, the crew monitored each gauge, ensuring every reading aligned with expectations. The 4 Pratt & Whitney JT3C engines roared beneath their feet, each delivering over 13,000 pounds of thrust, providing a sense of controlled power as the plane climbed effortlessly. As they reached cruising altitude, the Braniff representatives exchanged glances, feeling quietly reassured. This was the plane that could redefine air travel, and so far, it was everything Boeing had promised. That smooth takeoff, that sense of calm, it was all about to shatter. Just as the plane hit cruising altitude at 12,000 feet, disaster struck. Without any warning, a loud bang echoed through the cabin, followed by a violent jolt that shook the entire plane. In a split second, 3 of the 4 engines tore away from the wings, leaving the jagged, smoking mess of metal. To put this in perspective, losing 1 engine is bad enough. It's like removing a leg from a table. But losing 3 out of 4? That's like turning a stable, 4-legged table into a pogo stick at the worst possible moment. The engineers on board knew what this meant. They'd prepared for various technical failures, but a triple engine loss was beyond their worst-case scenarios. With 75% of its power gone, the 707 was now 1 misstep away from total mechanical failure. The plane shuddered and dipped as Wheatley fought to keep it level, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. As if the situation wasn't catastrophic enough, the final engine sputtered and died shortly after. In an instant, Boeing's prize 707 was no longer a powered jet. It was a glider, 12,000 feet in the air and rapidly losing altitude. This dream flight had turned into an aviation nightmare. With all engines down, the 707's hydraulic systems also lost power, severely limiting Wheatley's control over the plane. Hydraulic systems are crucial. They control everything from the flaps and rudders to the plane's brakes. In essence, Wheatley was now trying to steer a 140,000-pound aircraft with almost no control surfaces. Imagine driving a car down a mountain road when, out of nowhere, your engine dies, your brakes stop working, and you've got nothing but the steering wheel to guide you. Now amplify that by, say, 35,000 feet and 400 miles per hour, and you get an idea of what the crew was facing. During the seemingly hopeless situation, Wheatley and Laird stayed calm and focused. They knew their best, and only, chance of survival was to convert altitude into distance, essentially turning the 707 into a glider. They needed to glide the plane as far as possible, ideally toward a stretch of black ground that could serve as an emergency landing site. With only minutes left to find a suitable spot before running out of sky, the two pilots worked in sync, guiding the plane toward what they hoped was an open field several miles ahead. It was a risky move, but with no engines, they didn't have many options. In an eerie silence, the Boeing 707 began its descent. Without the familiar hum of engines, the only sound was the wind rushing past the wings. Inside the cockpit, Wheatley and Laird felt every shift and gust of air, fully aware that each movement could be the difference between life and death. Carefully, they aligned the plane with the empty field ahead. Wheatley's hands were steady yet responsive on the controls, guiding the 707 closer to the ground. In those final seconds, it was as if time slowed down. Wheatley made a last adjustment to the nose of the plane, bracing for impact. Then, with a jolting thud, the 707 touched down. The landing was rough, but held. Against all odds, Wheatley and Laird had brought the powerless 707 safely to the ground. Inside the cabin, stunned silence filled the air as the crew absorbed what had just happened. They had survived a triple engine failure, an uncontrolled descent, and one of the most challenging landings imaginable. Everyone on board was shaken, but miraculously, there were no serious injuries. The engineers checked one another, still in disbelief at their survival. Wheatley and Laird exchanged a quiet look, fully aware of the odds they had just defied. The Boeing 707 was battered, but, incredibly, still intact. Wheatley and his crew had managed a landing that seemed almost miraculous. Back at Boeing headquarters, news of the incident spread quickly. The company was already preparing an investigation to uncover exactly what had caused the engines to detach, determined to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. The investigation exposed several critical issues. The structural design of the 707 had weaknesses that contributed to the engine detachment. Specifically, the engine's mountings hadn't been fully reinforced, meaning that under extreme conditions, they could, and did, separate from the wing. Boeing's engineers quickly realized the need for urgent design modifications. The incident prompted significant revisions, with reinforced engine mountings and stricter quality control measures implemented across the board. In the end, this near disaster became a turning point, not only for Boeing, but for the entire aviation industry. Changes made in response to the incident set new standards for jet design, safety testing, and quality assurance. Every flight after this was safer because of the lessons learned that day. New protocols were introduced, and Boeing increased testing rigor, both in terms of design and structural integrity. The company learned that sometimes it takes a near disaster to expose hidden vulnerabilities, leading to an industry-wide commitment to safety and reliability. Today, every plane component is rigorously tested to withstand even the most improbable scenarios, ensuring that passengers can step onto a plane with confidence in its resilience and safety. And that's a wrap. So, do you think a pilot today would handle things the same way? Or have you heard of other flight stories that had you on the edge of your seat? Drop your comments below. Before you go, don't forget to check out my recent video, "The Wings on This Huge Plane Made People Afraid." Make sure you hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon. Thanks for watching.